Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everybody for coming here today. My name is Sydney Lund, and I'm the Programs and Outreach Specialist here at Commuting Solutions, and thank you so much for joining us for our second WCA member meeting of the year. So a little bit about our WCA program. Our Workplace Commute Ambassadors are employees from companies along the Northwest region who are working on encouraging their fellow employees to try sustainable transportation options rather than driving solo while they're heading to work. And so before we get started, I just wanted to go over some housekeeping items. So if you haven't done so already, please type your name and organization into the chat box so everybody knows who's here. And thanks so much to everybody who's done that so far. And then we are recording this meeting, and everybody has been put on mute just to start off, but during the roundtable session, feel free to unmute yourself if you wanted to chat or to chime into the conversation here. And so, without further ado, here's some just general information. And then here is our agenda for today. So today we're going to have some guest speakers. We're going to have some guest speakers from the RAQ and RTD. And then following their sessions, we're going to have an interactive session where we'll have some polls and some time to chat about transition plans for going back into the office. And then we'll end with an update on Summer Bike Challenge, Bike to Work Day, and upcoming WCA events for this summer. So just to kick us off, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, which is Sarah Goodwin, who is the Communications Director for the Regional Air Quality Council, and she'll be giving a presentation on the RAQ Summer Ozone program. And following her presentation, we'll have some time for a Q&A, so feel free to type in your questions in the chat box as they come in, and we'll be sure to read those out during the Q&A session. So thank you for joining us today, Sarah.
Sure, thank you very much. I know one of our RAQ board members is here on the call, Kathleen Bracke. Didn't know if Kathleen wanted to say a couple words about the RAQ.
Oh, great. Thanks, Sarah. Sorry, I'm just getting unmuted. So just wanted to say thank you and the opportunity to share the information from the RAQ. I've been on the RAQ board for several years and really want to say a shout out to Sarah for her work and all of the work that's done as part of the RAQ Simple Steps Better Air campaign and getting the word out to our communities. I work for Boulder County, and we use the information from the RAQ on a frequent basis in our own programs and to help support our employees. And I just think it's a great regional initiative to work on air quality issues. We're continuing to face more and more serious ozone problems, and obviously such an attractive part of living and working in the metro area along the North Front Range is our beautiful scenery and being able to see the mountains and have healthy air. And so I think everything we can do to support our air quality programs is really important, not only for our communities, but for our economy. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Sarah. I just want to thank her for her work.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thanks so much. If you could advance the next slide, Sydney. Great, thank you. This is just kind of a summary of what I'm going to be talking about today. As Kathleen said, we are facing some quote unquote serious ozone air quality challenges, and I'm going to talk about what those challenges are, the role that mobile sources plays in those challenges across the region, and then a little bit more about what the RAQ is and how we have many resources for businesses in the region and local governments, organizations of all kinds. So I'm going to go through some of those resources and then talk about some of the specific things that the Simple Steps Better Air program does and has for this audience, and also talking about more specific, probably related to this group, is employer-based trip reduction programs. So next slide, please. So last December, the EPA did reclassify the Metro Denver and North Front Range area as being in serious non-attainment for ground level ozone. So this was for the 2008 75 parts per billion standard. So what that means basically is that we got bumped up to a more serious designation for ozone, and we are working very, very hard in the region with all our partners to come into compliance with that ozone standard. We are also faced with we're working towards another standard, which is 70 parts per billion. That's the standard that was given to our region by the EPA in 2015. So I'm going to go into the standards a little bit more in the presentation, and you'll kind of see why this group especially and groups like it across the region are so critical and important to helping us reach these standards. Next slide, please. So here's just kind of a historical picture of the ozone trends that we've had in our region. As you can see, we started out in the late 90s. We were in the high 80s. We've kind of bumped around, and a lot of this is due to every year. A lot of it's due to meteorology, the weather, but we have made some progress in decreasing our ozone pollution. And as of last year, we were at a 78 parts per billion. But again, we really want to reach that 70 parts per billion, which is a lot of work, by about 2023 to 2024. So, Sydney, I don't know if it will work. I have like a little arrow that point. Oh, there you go. Okay, one more. There you go. One more. So it's just showing. Here's our goal. We want to reach. We need to reach that 70 parts per billion by 2023, and obviously that's challenging, and we have a lot of work to do within the region. So that's why I'm super happy you all invited me to talk, and you can see how the resources that the RAQ has to help us all communicate to our residents and our businesses and our organizations, employees, about how we can all contribute to this. So next slide, please. This is just a picture of the role of mobile sources. So I'm really calling out the cars, SUVs, light trucks, and then also the medium and heavy duty vehicles in the region and their contribution to ozone. So ozone pollution is created by a combination of volatile organic compounds and nitrogen oxides, and they kind of cook and bake in the sunlight in the summertime, and they create ozone, ground level ozone pollution. So this is showing 17% of VOC emissions are caused by gas-powered vehicles in the region, and then 33% of NOx emissions are created by gas-powered vehicles. So these are on-road vehicles. I'm not talking about the off-road, planes, trains, construction equipment. That those do play a role, definitely, and you can see all the different sources in those charts. But I really wanted to call out the gas-powered vehicles, because obviously that's where a lot of the pollution is coming from, and where we're all capable of changing our habits and getting that number lower. So next slide, please. So this is just a real general summary of what the Regional Air Quality Council is. We're the lead air quality planning agency for the 9-county Denver Metro North Front Range ozone non-attainment region. So we are in non-attainment for ozone all the way from Douglas County all the way up to Larimer and parts of Weld County. So we conduct air quality planning and technical analyses, and we have several incentive programs that reduce emissions from mobile and lawn and garden sources. And then also, as Kathleen mentioned, we have our Simple Steps Better Air public education and outreach program. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on each program. Next slide, please. So the RAQ really is a resource for local governments and businesses. we have our Charge Ahead Colorado program, and I put each program's website so you can find more information about each program. But Charge Ahead Colorado is our funding for electric vehicles and charging stations. It's a grant program for nonprofits, local governments, all kinds of different organizations apply for grant funding for electric vehicles and charging stations. It's a joint program with the Colorado Energy Office. So the RAQC territory is the 7 counties in the Metro Denver area, and then the Colorado Energy Office covers the other counties across Colorado. So that's our Charge Ahead Colorado program. I encourage everyone to go to that website and find out more and see if your organization is eligible for applying for electric vehicles or charging stations. Then we also have our Alt Fuels Colorado program, same website. And this is similar to the Charge Ahead, but it's funding for alternative fuel vehicles and infrastructure support. So this is more the medium heavy duty side. We are now, with this program, we are now looking at scrapping I think it's 2009 vehicles and replacing them with either renewable natural gas or all electric vehicles. So that is our Alt Fuels Colorado program. Another program we have that's really more on the consumer or general public side is our Mow Down Pollution program. And there's the website where you can find more information. This is a really exciting program because it's new this year in terms of our partnership with Home Depot. So we have 8 Home Depots participating across the region. And if you go to that website, or encourage residents or employees to go to that website, they can apply for a voucher, and that's a $150 voucher, as long as they recycle their old gas-powered mower, and they will get a certificate at the recycler. And then they can take that voucher into one of the 8 Home Depots and receive their all-electric mower. So it's a really cool program. We're so excited. I just heard from the program manager that we have issued about almost 400 vouchers, and we have a lot more to go. We have almost 900 funding abilities. So we're about halfway to our goal. So I would encourage everyone to, get the word out about this to your people, your networks, your audiences, because we really want to get this. We really want to reach that goal and continue this program throughout the years. The other resource I wanted to offer to everyone is to sign up for the Air Monitor newsletter. This is a newsletter I put out every quarter, and it just goes, lots of information about air quality programs around the region, obviously RAQC programs, but also we focus a lot on partner programs, and we're always happy to include other people. So if you have some kind of event or any kind of sustainability program or anything that you want to get the word out, please let me know and I'll include it in our newsletter. The next one is coming out actually by Friday. I have to get it out by the end of the month. So you can sign up for that newsletter on our site, RAQ.org. And also to the point about our programs, I'm always happy to provide content for company newsletters, websites, social media content. So I'll get a little bit more into that later, but please reach out to me if you feel like any of these programs are of interest and you want to use them or you want some content for your communications. Next slide, please. So this is one thing we do through the Simple Steps Better Air program. We have our Ozone Alert program, and I'm sure many of you are on the list, so you probably received the emails. We also have a texting program, and we put these alerts on our social media platforms. So just kind of a quick overview of how this works. Every day throughout the summer, the health department calls us at the RAQ and says they give their ozone forecast for the day or for the next day, and they say, you know, either we do or we don't have, we're forecasting an ozone alert. So when they hit that trigger and they say, yes, we have an ozone alert, they let me know when the alert is in effect for, how long, and exactly where the alert is. But it's typically across the Front Range and those 9 counties. So once I get that call, we put out the email alert and the text and the social media, and then we also, you've probably seen the signs along the highways. We work with CDOT to get those posted, and then new this year we're working with E470 to do the same. So they are also posting our alerts along the E470 corridor, which is just additional reach, and that we're really excited about that partnership. So I encourage you all, if you don't receive these alerts, to go to simplestepsbetterair.org and sign up for these alerts. And then also, again, encourage your employees, your residents, and or whoever you think might be interested in receiving these alerts. Please encourage them to sign up for them. Next slide, please. And this, I just wanted to kind of show the Simple Steps Better Air. We have some new social media creative that we developed this year, and it was really designed specifically for this pandemic situation we're in, because we did see a pretty significant improvement in air quality over the last several months due to the lack of human activity. And so we really kind of wanted to, definitely didn't want to make light or say that this pandemic is a positive thing, but we did see some positive behavior and some positive implications of the behaviors and changes in behaviors. So we developed this campaign to really encourage people to keep that good going, keep the walking, the biking, the teleworking if possible, the spending time with family, and different things that is helping our air. And so I just wanted to kind of give a picture to everyone of what we're doing with our social media. And in a couple slides, I'll show you how you can access some of these materials as well. Next slide, please. And this is what I was referring to. So the Simple Steps Better Air program has a digital toolkit for all of our partners, and we have all kinds of good content in there. We have social media posts, infographics, collateral materials that we are constantly reaching out to our communities with, and just trying to get the word out to people that they can play a role in improving air quality. So I wanted to call out that new this year we have a Spanish language kids activity book. So that blue book you see, that's obviously the English version, but we do have a Spanish version as well. We got some feedback from some partners that and some communities that this was a needed thing, as well as the Spanish language RAQ card. So that's really kind of an informational card that you can use with your audiences, and it kind of lists out and explains each simple step and ways that actions people can take to improve air quality. So the program website is called simplestepsbetterair.org, and we just did a refresh of that site, so it's brand new this season, and I encourage everyone to check it out. But also please reach out to me if you're interested in receiving the link to this digital toolkit. I'm happy to send it to anyone that wants more information, and sending it out to your audiences to encourage good actions and behaviors for improving air quality. Next slide, please. Okay, so that's kind of a picture of the RAQ and the Simple Steps Better Air program. But I kind of want to take a step back now and go over the ozone standards a little bit more, and then explain what we have going internally at the RAQ and how you all can get involved. So back to what I was saying about the federal ozone standards. We are in serious non-attainment for the 2008 75 parts per billion ozone standard. But what is so critical, especially this summer, is that if we don't meet that standard, and that would be by next July, so exactly a year, we will be bumped up to severe, a severe classification, which means that employer-based trip reduction programs will become mandatory, mandated by the EPA. So, really the goal is to avoid that, obviously to improve our air quality and to meet the two standards by 2023 to 2024. So the RAQ is working really hard with all kinds of partners, including many people on this call. And we have developed what we call the Control Strategy Committee. And this committee is to evaluate and advance strategies that will continue to decrease our ozone levels and improve our air quality. And obviously, the end goal is to bring the area into compliance with federal ozone standards. So a little bit more information on this on the next slide on the committee. Next slide, please. So our Control Strategy Committee, we broke it up into 3 work groups. As you can see right there, and I think most applicable to this audience is our employer-based trip reduction programs work group. This work group really has 2 goals: to develop intensive outreach to business and government agencies for immediate and long-term voluntary commuter and business trip reduction efforts, which many of you are already doing, and that's why you're a part of this group. And Dr. Cog and Commuting Solutions and all the other TMAs around the region, this is their bread and butter. This is what they do, and so the work group is really just trying to enhance the work that's already going on in these voluntary ways. But we're also starting to look at a regulatory approach for mandatory employer-based trip reduction programs. So we'd really obviously like to avoid a mandate from the EPA, but should that happen, we need to have an approach identified. So the work group's really starting to identify what that would look like, what the EPA rules are, and recommendations. So I wanted to encourage everyone and on this call, if you're not already involved in the RAQ's employer-based trip reduction work group, please do get involved. We are constantly searching and looking for input and guidance from the business community on how this should look and what's the best approach. It sounds like you all are already doing this a lot with your employees. So we need those champions. We need those people out in the business community, really encouraging others to advocate for employer-based trip reduction programs. So again, you can sign up for this work group by just going to RAQ.org, and we would absolutely love your participation and guidance. Next slide, please. And this is just my last slide. Wanted to reiterate the RAQ websites, the organizational website, RAQ.org, and then the program websites. There's my contact information, and again, just know that we have that Simple Steps Better Air digital toolkit available. We have the RAQ newsletter. We have all the program information, and I'm always happy to provide content. And and encouraging everyone also to consider joining the employer-based trip reduction work group. So that is what I have, Sydney.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah, for your presentation. And I know Mia said in the chat box she loves getting the air quality alerts via AccuWeather. So that's great to hear. I think we have time for one question. If anybody wants to type a question in the chat box, or feel free to unmute yourself. We might have time for one question here for Sarah.
Unless there's somebody else who has a question, Sarah, this is Audrey DeBarros with Commuting Solutions. And I was just wondering if you could let the group know what you all are seeing regarding air quality now that some of society is starting to open under COVID-19.
Yeah, you know, I'm probably not the best person to answer that, although I just knowing from the health department, I think, like I said, that, you know, in March, April, May time period, we definitely saw improvements in air quality, and a lot of that was the NOx emissions, so from cars basically. But you know, industrial, oil and gas, and industrial and industry was still going at that time. So most of the improvement was NOx. I think now, I don't know a ton about it, but I know we've just hearing other people talk on different calls. We have fairly low ozone levels this summer, although it sounds like you know, I don't know. In fact, I think my colleague Jessica Furco is on the line. I don't know if she wants to answer this.
Yeah, so I can try. Yeah, so we have seen, as Sarah mentioned, a decrease in NOx during the March, April, May timeframe. However, we've had a series of really hot days that have caused us to have higher ozone levels, despite possibly seeing a decrease in emissions. So right now, our design value for ozone is exceeding the current NAAQS. But the data is not all validated yet, so it's hard, like we don't want to make any definitive statements about that at this time, but we are seeing some elevated ozone levels due to the meteorology.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica, for that. And also thank you, Sarah, so much for your presentation. And I'll be sure to send out these presentation slides at the end. So in case you want to check out these websites or Sarah's contact information or anything like that, I'll send out all of that at the end so everybody can have that information. And so up next, we're going to have a presentation by RTD about Let's Get Our Region Moving Again campaign and the service updates in the Northwest Metro region. So Christina Zuzeta is RTD's Community Engagement Manager, and she's going to be giving a presentation. And then we're also going to have a Natalie Henlos from the Lead Service Planner and Specialist from the North team, and they'll be able to answer some questions if anybody has some questions about service updates within the Northwest Metro region. So thank you, Christina and Natalie, for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me. So I'll go ahead and get started here. So I know we've got a lot to cover. If I can get to the next slide here. Perfect. So we're going to start a little bit about what we've been doing during COVID. There's been a lot going on, and for us to continue service during COVID, we wanted to make sure the community knew that we were doing everything we could to maintain our service and keep everyone safe. So that includes cleaning the vehicles every evening. We implemented rear door boarding, and we suspended fares through July 1st. We then have reinstated the fares and gone back to front door boarding, but we did that to help reduce the ability for our drivers to contact with the passengers and to provide distance, and fare collection helped us, a suspension of fare collection helped us during that time in doing that. We are still limiting the amount of riders we have on our vehicles, so 15 on a standard bus and 20 on the larger articulated buses. or the amount of riders that we would hope to have during any given time, 30 on a rail vehicle. And of course, this is going to fluctuate as we move through the ebbs and flows of the new reality of what we're seeing with our services. We're also staging vehicles along our routes, and we have street supervisors monitoring the passenger loads. We have our bus operators looking at what their passengers loads look like. And if it seems like we are exceeding the numbers that I just mentioned, they will call in a dispatch and ask for that additional vehicle to get onto that service route and provide the additional vehicles so that there could be some distancing there. And that's important. I'll touch a little bit more on what the passengers can do to be a part of encouraging that social distancing here in just a second. But again, this is all something that we're still working on and still doing as we move through COVID. Next slide, please. So we ask everybody to be our partners in safety during this process. And we could do all the things that I mentioned and much more that we're doing, but it really comes down to everyone being a part of this. And the biggest thing that we have going right now is our Mask Up campaign that we're launching, as a matter of fact, today on social media. And you'll see over the next several weeks that we have a lot of stuff through our channels, asking people to make sure that they're masking up for the safety of themselves and the other passengers and our operators. It is something that just as any other agency or any other business is coming across, is it's difficult to get everyone to do it 100% of the time. So just that reminder, we're hoping will encourage people to continue to wear the masks and practice all the good practices. We also are asking people to look at the passenger loads on the vehicles. So just as I mentioned, we are keeping a close eye on it. We're asking our passengers to take a look at the vehicle loads. If a bus or a train looks full, we ask people to make more time in their commute just so that they could take the next bus or the next train that is going to be hopefully a little less full. And that process is something that we have to band together for. And it's going to require that if you are taking a commute, taking a look at what your commute's looking like and really being sure that if you feel like you can have that extra time to travel, please take it. We also are saying, you know, social distancing is everybody's responsibility as part of that. So that goes back to, if it looks full, don't jump on. To use your good judgment, and please wait for the next vehicle if you can. We also did some community outreach recently to promote this awareness. We distributed masks and hand sanitizers, and that went over pretty well. I was out there personally at some of these events, and I know that Commuting Solutions team was out there as well. But we saw that most of the people were wearing masks. We see that, generally speaking, people do intend on wearing masks. Sometimes they would forget it, and so it was good that we were out there handing out these supplies, because we did hear from some people, oh, thank goodness my mask just broke, or I had just forgotten my mask this morning, so thank you for being out here. Next slide, please. All right, so our overall recovery plan is a 4-phase process, and this is something that we're looking at both internally and externally. The process does outline what we'll be doing with our services to proceed safely. So we're looking at services, the facilities that we're operating out of, and the internal processes. And that one is a big one right now, because we're just making sure that our employees internally know what they need to be doing. We have processes in place. If an employee happens to need to travel for whatever reason, there are steps for getting them back into the workplace safely and making sure that we're monitoring them. And they too are having to be our partners throughout this process. And the dialogue and communication is key here in making sure that we're keeping tabs on what people are doing to make sure that we're keeping a cap on the potential for spread. So we're also, quite a few of us are telecommuting, as you can tell. I'm at home today. Unfortunately, not everybody can. Our operators are still out there and doing all the work on the front lines. But that means everybody else who can telecommute is. And right now it looks like we are going to continue through an undisclosed amount of time to continue to telecommute. So with that, we're looking, just like everyone else, what are the different processes we can have? How can we have community engagement from a remote area? What can we do to get the word out and communicate what RTD is doing? So that process is continuing for us as well as many companies in the area. Next slide, please. All right, so now I'll get to the Let's Get Our Region Moving campaign. And the campaign actually started in early May when we decided to put together to collect data around COVID-19 and ridership. So we put out a survey to our riders to see how people were feeling at the time. And we got over 2,600 respondents. The survey was in English and Spanish. And we saw some key things come through on this. We saw that people at the time were generally apprehensive about engaging in social activities, some of which is still true today as we see the rise and fall of the cases from week to week. The respondents were feeling less safe riding RTD at the time than they were feeling about going to the grocery store or visiting family members. And many wanted at the time to see what happens. You know, let's wait and see what happens. Is it really going to be as bad as everyone is saying, or is it going to get better? As we see now, our reality is that it's continuing. So we're moving along with this initial data set, and we're monitoring what other surveys are saying. We're talking to our partners in the transit agency throughout the country to see what they're saying, and really sharing information on how we're going to be operating in this new reality for quite some time. One other thing that we saw out of that survey is that most of the people at the time who had used RTD within the last 30 days were using it to go to and from work. And that is generally the case that we see even today. Next slide, please. So some of the common themes could be broken out into two areas per our survey, and some were things that we could do or related to RTD internally, and then there was things that were related to just COVID in general, which were very much outside of the RTD realm or RTD's ability to influence. So things that were related to RTD were people wanted to see that we were requiring personal protective equipment, face masks, providing sanitizers and cleaning our vehicles constantly, that we're promoting social distancing and enforcing passenger limits. We also saw that folks wanted to see an increase in and wanted to see service restored, which has been a challenge because, you know, as we see this at the time, service had actually been reduced, and we saw a drop in about 75% of our regular ridership. At the time, we couldn't increase service necessarily, but we do have quite a few vehicles still on the street to help promote the social distancing. So even though we may not be running all the routes, we are still running a lot of the buses that we usually run, just to have them on standby in case we see that ebb and flow in ridership. Other common things we saw people saying, well, you know, I need to see a big drop in COVID cases before I feel comfortable, or I need to see a vaccine available before I feel comfortable riding RTD or being out in that public sphere more. Next slide, please. Okay, so we used all of this information to inform us for our Let's Get the Region and Moving Again campaign, which we've already launched, and it's a 3-phase campaign in which there are some sub-phases, which I'll touch upon in a little bit. But the big major phases of this campaign were, you know, the first message was we're all in this together. And this goes back to all the things that RTD is doing to keep the vehicles clean and help promote social distancing. But also, as I mentioned, the partners and safety aspect. We wanted to make sure that everyone still knew that we are counting on them to not only continue to have a safe system, but also to be our partner in making sure we're doing all the right things. And part of that first phase was to make sure that we were telling people we're going to be gradually increasing service, and we're going to go ahead and introduce the fares again. So there are subsections of this campaign that we've rolled out and continue to roll out. The next phase was to get into the transit groove again. And we're not quite in that phase just yet. So, you know, for a moment there, we felt like we were going to get into that phase, and it looked like the cases were dwindling. So we thought, okay, we could see an uptick in our ridership, and we thought we were going to get a little bit more into that. And we're kind of hovering with, I would say, almost between phase 1 and 2 right now. We are seeing some more ridership, but that is changing constantly as people are looking at how the cases of COVID are going and how they're feeling about that. And then lastly, the area where I know we all hope to get to is our region has passed through or feeling like we've passed through COVID. We have more information about what it is and how we can avoid it, and our everything starts to open up again and we're thriving again. So we will be there through this process and on the other end of this as we go through COVID. How we're communicating that and what we're providing during the process is what Let's Get Our Region Moving is all about. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to touch a little bit on the financial challenges that we are seeing throughout this process. RTD did have some financial challenges before COVID came about, but when COVID came in, we saw 75% or more of our regular ridership dwindle, and so we are going to take a financial hit for that. We did receive $232 million in CARES Act money, but that is going specifically to the response of COVID. So that is the personal protective equipment and cleaners and special other equipment that we had to get. All the other monies that go into specifically to responding to COVID, and it didn't necessarily cover the financial impacts from previous to COVID. There will be some furloughs that are going on now for the salaried employees, and we're still talking about how we're going to approach the need for furloughs with our represented employees, which are the operators. So the next 2 months will be really important in determining where we are with our financial forecast. Next slide, please. All right, so I want to touch a little bit about Reimagine RTD, because you can't talk about Let's Get Our Region Moving without how we're going to reimagine the future of RTD. So we're getting our region moving. We're looking forward to having our riders back on board, but we also need to really carefully look at what are the constraints around RTD currently. So last year we launched the Reimagine RTD process, which was going to look at all of our supplies, all of our operator supply and our constraints, and create a system optimization plan based around what we do have available for us now. And this was to be implemented next year in 2021. It's going to be a short-term and a mid-term segment of plans. There's also within that a larger mobility plan for the future. It looks forward into 2050 and what we can do to address the needs of the region in the further outlook. Next slide, please. So now that we have COVID, we have to actually bring that into the Reimagine RTD process. And it is fortunate that we had the Reimagine RTD process underway, because if we weren't already looking at what our processes were like, what our services were like, and what our constraints were like, you know, we would be looking at a lot more and having to really draw up a plan, which would feel like almost like a last minute thing. Whereas here with Reimagine having started last year, the team was already looking at some of the constraints, some of the physical constraints, and now what those constraints are going to be further looked at given COVID. So the system optimization that'll come out of the first phase of Reimagine RTD is underway, and it'll help prioritize what phasing in of service looks like based around a lot of the research that the team has been doing and a lot of the information they've been gathering over the last almost year. Next slide, please. So now that we do have Reimagine and we do have COVID, and fortunately, again, we're pulling the two together, and it's important that this work is underway because it's going to be unfolding very, very soon here. We'll start seeing some of the results of Reimagine come out in the early part of next year. But what we're going to be seeing in that is not only what are the constraints and opportunities that are a result of COVID and the Reimagine process, but how we're going to be serving our communities. So we're looking at how we're going to be serving the social equity communities and the transit-dependent populations. We're going to be looking at things like cell phone data, the travel patterns around that. They were very different before COVID, during COVID, and certainly they'll be different after. So we're going to be pulling in that data, which is going to be incredibly useful for us as we look at changing the way we're going to be moving the region around. We're doing surveys. In fact, we just closed a survey on Friday, and we'll be having those results here in the next couple of weeks. We've conducted other statistically valid surveys to see what are the priorities for the people in the region. around some of these parameters that I'm mentioning now. What are the more important things? So if we have a constraint system, or if we have a budget constraint, then what are the best ways to allocate the service that we're able to give? We need to understand the future travel patterns, as I mentioned. So we're going to be doing some model runs around the changes in teleworking, working from home, schooling from home. So all of that's going to be rolled into the system optimization plan. Next slide, please. All right, so we are still evaluating the availability of funds. We do have a shortfall for this year. In fact, the board of directors is meeting this evening to talk about a little bit more about the different projections that they have. They have, I would say, a worst case scenario, a middle case scenario, and then a least difficult scenario, if you will. And they're going to be looking at those models and determining which one are we going to be utilizing as we move forward. But all of this is going to be very, very dynamic as we move along, because we are still getting information about what the tax revenues are looking like for the early part of the year when everything was closed, and how that might impact us as we move forward. So they are constantly looking at the numbers, and all of this is changing as we're moving forward. So we expect the community will soon see what we are thinking about as far as here's our budget, here's our constraint, and how we're going to be rolling out the system optimization plan in the early part of the year. So we are going to have to be flexible and innovative. We're going to have to move with whatever COVID hands us and how that reality impacts all of our resources and our budgets and how it impacts our services. Next slide, please. All right, so I saw, I think, at least one question pop up in there. I don't see it now. If we could read that out.
Oh, sorry, I was unmuted. Yeah, so I'm happy to read that out. That's from Sarah, and she was asking how people can promote the Let's Get Our Region Moving Again campaign through our different channels.
Oh, thank you for that question. So yes, we actually have it on our website. If you just go to our website, there's a little search feature. It's probably the easiest way to get to it. On the top right, type in Let's Get Our Region Moving, and it'll take you to our webpage for the campaign. In there, there is a partner resource area that we put together. There's some different assets on there, images, different artwork. There's some information that you can put onto your email, so you can just kind of pull that text and pop it into an email blast if you're interested in doing that. There's a couple of videos on there. So all of that is there for our partners to share and through all their avenues. I also would encourage that if you haven't already, follow us on social media, Facebook and Twitter being the primary points of where we're putting out all this information. So if it's a simple and easy for you to just share it and push out the information, I think that that's a very good way to go. So if you're wondering what's going on with RTD, we're putting something up new every day. This week it's going to be the Mask Up campaign, and into next week. We're also asking our partners to help us with some of these campaigns. So the Mask Up campaign, we're going to soon be asking folks to help provide videos, just a quick 30-second, even 15-second video of somebody wearing a mask or a group of people wearing a mask and saying why it's important to mask up. Why do you feel it's important to mask up? And really the message is much better served by anybody who is outside of RTD. If they see it's our customer or somebody who really relies on our service and masking up is important, then it'd be more important if it came from you. All right. Any other questions?
Hey, Christina, I just wanted to confirm Natalie is on the call.
You know, I don't think she is. I didn't see her on the call, but I can certainly help answer some of the questions unless they're very, very specific to a route.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions regarding service performance for a few transit routes in our region, but I can hold off on that and follow up with her offline.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Christina, for that presentation. And I can go ahead and share that partner toolkit out with the group when I share the presentation, so everybody can have that as well.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So we're going to jump into the poll part of our webinar today. And so I just launched a poll, and so we wanted to kind of get everybody's intake and kind of what their office's plans for transitioning back into the office. I know a lot of different organizations have different plans for transitioning back into the office, so we thought it'd be great to just collect some survey results. So we'll give you some, maybe a few minutes if you could fill that out, and then we'll be sure to share the results too. Awesome, so we're getting some poll results in. I'll give everybody maybe about a minute and a half, and just due to time, we'll probably send out the poll answers in an email, and we can look over those pretty quickly here too. But thanks all thanks to everybody who's voted so far. We have about 33% in right now. So we have about 60 or 70% in now. So maybe I'll just give it about 30 more seconds here. So I'll do about 15 more seconds to everybody get in their answers. Okay, I'll close in about 5 seconds. Okay, thanks everybody for answering those poll questions. I just put them up here, so if you want to take a look, but I'll also be sending those out too. That way everybody can have them if you're curious. I know everybody has different transition plans, and I think it's helpful for us all to know just kind of where everybody's at in the Valley. And so I wanted to switch over and have a few updates on the Summer Bike Challenge and Bike to Work Day. And so the Summer Bike Challenge is happening right now. It's happening between, started in June, and it's all happening all the way until September. And so this is put on by Way to Go, and they're really encouraging people to participate by checking out new destinations on the Pedal Pursuit scavenger hunt, or by sharing bike photos on social media and using the hashtag that you see there, which is the Summer Bike Challenge. And so this is a map of all of the different places that's on the Pedal Pursuit. There's some places from all over the region, and so you can check that out by downloading or going onto their website and looking at the map here. And then you would just need to ride to 5 different locations within the area, track your trips with My Way to Go. And then they have a checklist on their website, so you can send that checklist to the email on the screen. And then once you do that, you can be entered to win different types of prizes. So there's a Garmin watch, a Timbuktu commuter pack, or a bike-like set. And this is really just to get people to get out on their bikes and to go and see new and different places within their region, or maybe in another part of the Denver metro area. And so again, I'll be sending all this stuff, this presentation out, so you can have all of this, all of the links to that. And so wanted to give also a quick update on Bike to Work Day. And so as many of you know, Bike to Work Day has been switched to September 22nd, and that's on Tuesday. And so right now they are planning in person. However, Dr. Cog and Way to Go is thinking about having either an in-person or virtual or some kind of combination of events. And they let us know that by August 1st, they're going to give us kind of that finalized decision of how they're going to be doing this event within the region. And so we have all of your email addresses, so we'll be sending out that information once we hear about that within the next couple of days to kind of see if we're going to have, what kind of Bike to Work Day we're going to have, just barring COVID and how we are gathering in this time. And so we have two save the dates. We have our quarterly meeting, that's on August 26th from 4 to 5:30, and that's going to be a Bike to Work Day planning meeting, so we'll definitely have some more information about Bike to Work Day. And so the location of that is not announced yet. We might do an in-person event, or it might be a webinar event, just barring different types of gathering locations. But we will be having that event. And then the second event we'll have is the WUCA US 36 bike ride meetup. So we'll be biking along the bikeway, US 36 bikeway, and then meeting up at a cafe or a restaurant. And so we haven't decided on the location yet of that, but we'll definitely be sure to send that out once we have it. And so just be on the lookout for an upcoming email from us with that information there. And we'd be really happy to have you join. And for the bike ride meetup, that's definitely open to, if you have another coworker who's interested in sustainable transportation, feel free to invite them and to join the conversation afterwards. We'll have a informal networking session too. And so just wanted to give you mine and Audrey DeBarros's contact information. Feel free to reach out to us if you need anything at all. We're really happy to help. And I wanted to thank the RAQ and RTD for presenting today. It was really great information. We really appreciate having them here. And thank you to the Commuting Solutions team for helping to put on this webinar. So we'll be sending out the webinar slides shortly, along with some information from the RAQ and RTD. So be on the lookout for that. And thanks for joining us today. Hope you have a nice day. Bye.